afternoon and good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Ambassadorial Wing and another installment of Council of the Ones Babylon 5 review. And as always, we are live. It is Friday afternoon or Friday evening, depending on what part of the world you're watching this in. And hope you all are having a good week. It's the start of a brand new weekend. It is the beginning of the final stretch for us in the Christian community of Holy Week. Today is, of course, Good Friday. But today we are back with another installment of our Babylon 5 review series. And today we are going to be covering the episode Korra's Mother, Korra's Father. And I do want to make a quick note before we jump in. For those of you that do follow us on a weekly basis, if you're wondering, wait a minute, shouldn't we be doing Ragged Edge? Yes, we should. But unfortunately, I kind of flip-flop things around and I set the stream up for this episode rather than Ragged Edge. So we will be covering Ragged Edge next week. This week, we are covering Korra's Mother, Korra's Father. And as always, thank you all for being here, whether you catch this live or on replay. Hope you enjoy our discussion. Hope you enjoy the stream. And as always, smash that like button, share the stream out with your friends. And if this is your first visit to the council and the ambassadorial wing, and you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and that way when we go live or I do an upload, you will be made aware of all the excitement. So,
and also, the Corps endorses murder of mundanes. Da-da-da-do.
Yes. So, but that all being said, that is my bit of shilling, as we call it here on the YouTube. Want to send a shout out to the chat to everybody that's in the in there. I know Archer Colin, you were here earlier. Hope you're still here. Hope you're doing well, bud. Appreciate you being here. So, anyway, my friends, my fellow council members, here we are gathered together again. So, I've done my bit. Let's open the discussion. Korra's Mother, Korra's Father. Where would you like to begin?
And pressed is the guiding hand of Olympus, or something like that.
Oh, for the love of Pete.
He's like the tastemaker, a very bad tastemaker.
Sienna, you're killing me. I would call him something, but I'm trying not to swear, especially today. So, anyway, this is obviously a very unusual episode in terms of what we cover and everything, or what we see on Babylon 5 from week to week. It's rare that we focus on a area of the Babylon 5 universe that isn't specifically focused on the station itself. This time, as I said in the description, we're taking a peek behind the curtain at Psy Corps and going quite literally into the belly of the beast. And it's strangely occupied by a guy that plays a Russian on Star Trek.
Yes, this vessel needs some more operation procedures. Oh, please press button to send a mundane out into space. Bye.
Oh, Lord in heaven, give me strength to get through this stream.
I had many coffees, yay.
You've clearly had too much coffee. Oh, and here is another member of the council. Hopefully he will bring some sanity to these proceedings. Being Sophiana's a little out there, a little caffeine overloaded. So, Lord OJ.
What did I miss? The first thing I heard help me get through the
to
string.
Save mundane. Press 2 to kill mundane out the airlock. Oopsie. Like, seriously, that poor guy thought he was going to get away with it, and it's like, oh no.
Oh.
And they didn't follow Sheridan's advice to strip the body first.
No.
That's actually really good advice.
But then again, the good guys have standards. Bester does not. He only has like, are you here to protect my telepaths or not? If not, you are on the chopping block. Bye bye.
Oh,
Yeah, and strangely enough, we only see two members of the crew from B5 in this episode. That is, of course, Mr. Allen and Dr. Franklin. Everybody else is pretty much off elsewhere at other parts of the station or doing other things.
well,
So-
it kind of makes sense because honestly, if this is like a day-to-day thing, like Bester does come often for a short visit, I think they would all avoid him.
Yeah, as much as possible. Otherwise, they'd have to have brain insurance in the form of Minbari telepaths. It came to that one time.
It's
Because they certainly can't use any environments people anymore. Oopsie. Yes. Ooh, wait, did the internet die? Yes, the internet decided to take somebody to the ether. Uh-oh.
No, Code J's, I think he's having connection issues.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Bad internet. No, don't do it.
I thought I was going to bad internet myself today. I was interested in Bester and Zach Allen. They're almost a mirror of each other in attitude towards each camp. Bester saying how their lives aren't as valuable, and Bester pretty much saying the same thing. Well, why is killing a telepath a bad thing? Almost mirrors of each other.
Well, the thing I found very interesting is the fact that Bester is taking orders. You would think Bester would be the one that's giving the orders, considering he was kind of one of the big wigs of Psy Corps. Now, I did have a question for those of you that have read the Psy Corps trilogy of books. Is the little story that he told about his parents actually true, or was that completely made up?
That's from what I'm reading in the Babylon wiki. That's a story his grandfather told him. His parents were leaders of the telepath resistance,
of like the first resistance, the first really big resistance. But his actual grandfather did raise him. His actual grandfather was the initial director of Psy Corps. From what I remember reading.
That's very true. Yes.
And Bester's real name is Stephen Baxter, isn't it? That's his true.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember his mom. Yeah, I'll have to look it up here in a moment. But yeah, that's what makes the ending of the Psy Corps trilogy so much fun, though. The actual history gets to come out.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, with the way Dexter was the way the Dexter family went about things, Bester actually never even knew that those two were his legit parents. He believed everything his grandfather said, hook, line, and sinker, but he didn't even know his grandfather was his grandfather, if I remember correctly. Because I think the grandfather didn't want to influence him unduly, through a kind of a family relationship. I think it's because he was trying to connect Bester to the Psy Corps as the parents rather than any kind of individual. So he wouldn't turn out like what Byron ended up doing, like more of a cult of personality in some ways.
Yeah. And want to send a shout out to the chat, Dad Dude Vince and MB Geek. Gentlemen, good to see you this afternoon. Hope y'all are having a good day and appreciate you tuning in today. I have to kind of kick off my thoughts on this episode. I like the angle that they take of having two trainee Psychops as kind of the focal point of this episode, or at least as the lead in for this episode. You're not just slumped right down with the grouchy, frumpy old Bester. And there's one scene in particular that I found somewhat amusing, I guess unintentionally. And that's, of course, the scene where the young lady, Lauren Ashley, I think is her name, she shows up to Bester's quarters during the concert, and she actually comes on to him, and he very politely and I think very gently um, lets her down nicely. And I have to say, hey, who knew Bester actually has some class? So, guys, your thoughts on that particular scene?
Bester knows he can't get it up anymore.
Oof. But to me, it kind of fits a little bit, just because you get to see the Psy Corps from more direct, especially from the ground level, how some of the people in the Psy Corps view Bester. They see him as like some sort of example to uphold, like if they're completely indoctrinated to it.
Yeah, they even say to him, I've never seen anyone, almost what Byron's people said of him, I've never seen anyone fight so hard for our people.
Mm.
And I thought it was really nice to see the other side of Bester, him with his friends, with the people he sees as his, that he gets on. And he treated, was it that young intern, I thought, like you mentioned, but real class, put her down gently and told her, tomorrow don't worry, because nothing happened, you have nothing to fear, nothing happened to you, don't worry about it. I mean, he really, it's about as classy as you could get, and that's a weird thing saying about Bester.
Well, it also shows how much he really does care, because he's only a bad guy to non-telepaths, or non-telepaths who, or telepaths who pretty much follow the Psy Corps rules, you know? And that's like a form of prejudice still, because of how evil we've seen him treat telepaths who go rogue and other people, you know? But he like Byron treats his own or his people like with utmost respect, and that shows kind of how much he believes in this cause. But
yeah.
he is a bad guy. It's just that, you know, he's a saint to his people.
Well, yeah, like again, if you guys
But
do
to
get
others,
to read
no.
the Psy Corps stuff, it will showcase from moment to moment how his own grandfather wanted to make Bester like the perfect kind of like poster boy for the Corps' mother, the Corps' father, like every step of the way. It was kind of frightening. So it's like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I do like Colin's comment here. I think at heart, Bester views himself as a telepathic patriot. Witness his reaction to the suicide of Byron's people. Yeah, because he's honestly kind of he's wounded to a certain degree by the fact that all of those telepaths are now dead, but they died for a cause that they believe in, and in some way, Bester does respect that. Now, I will say about Bester in this episode, I know we have seen him do some really questionable and in some instances, some very just downright duplicitous things. But I think this is another episode that really, I think Straczynski tried to humanize Bester in a way that doesn't necessarily make us empathize with him, but helps us to maybe understand him a little bit better. Because if you think about it, Bester in a lot of ways is a product of his entire life being spent in the Psy Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And in being indoctrinated to it at every level.
Yes. So you almost get this sense that maybe if Bester had never been dropped into it's almost like if he had not been dropped into Psy Corps, he would not have been the man that we meet starting off in season 1. But unfortunately, all his years He has been. So,
And sad
like
to
he's
say,
Mhm.
because of his mother and her, because she didn't realize that the director of Psy Corps was her father, because he was unregistered telepath himself, and only Bester's grandmother knew that this guy was a telepath. She kept that secret the whole time. So the guy who's the poster boy of like the initial movement for Psy Corps, oh, I'm just a simple mundane. He was no mundane. So yeah, because of that tie, I think poor Bester was basically set up to be the perfect baby for his grandfather's project. Unfortunately for him.
I think Bester, regardless of if he ended up in Psy Corps or not, if he didn't end up in Psy Corps, I believe he would have been some sort of telepathic revolutionary, maybe a better, more refined version of Byron.
Maybe.
And I think he would have been more, and maybe he would have been more self-taught in terms of how he handled things. I don't think he necessarily would have been a like a protege of anybody if he would have escaped and not joined the Corps. I'd like to see like a what if Babylon 5 kind of story with regards to Bester, because it would be interesting to see what direction something like that would take for the character had he not become the Psy Corps poster boy that he became.
Well, they're making a new one. They might make Bester a good guy in that one. Who knows?
Who knows?
We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. And do want to say hello to the chat, Chaos Nova and Drake Tungsten, gentlemen. Good to see you both. Chaos, I know you and I have talked off and on Instagram and Twitter. Appreciate you popping into this afternoon. And Drake, good to see you as always. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. So, and of course, this wouldn't be a Psy Corps episode if we didn't have a rogue telepath deciding. Well, okay, let's put it this way: we have a we have a Psy Corps trainee telepath who has issues. Obviously, in terms of multiple personality disorder, and honestly, it's people who suffer from split personality or multiple personality. They're very difficult to deal with, and when you have a person with multiple personality, but also who is a telepath, and one personality is a lot more unrestrained and obviously very vicious and instinctual, and has the skill set that this particular telepath has, and that's of course Harris. It's not an easy thing to see them do what they do, because I know the special effects weren't, like, obviously they weren't the greatest, but seeing that one guy, granted he was a thug, he was a gambler, and he was trying to rough up Harris, but when Harris causes all of those aneurysms and brain bleeds inside his head and the guy essentially drops dead, you're like, oh crap, this is not a good thing, and is Bester even going to be able to handle this? And of course, I mean, through the course of the episode, we see what happens. So, guys, your thoughts on the character of Harris?
Ambassador, imagine if, just for a moment, if Bester were to undergo a procedure popular in Babylon 5 mythology, the death of personality. Could you imagine the kinds of things that this man would be struggling with, the kinds of things that would keep him up at night? It just like popped into my head right now. The death of personality for Mr. Bester. I mean, wow.
They'd probably have to get quite a few level 12 people to be able to do that, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, imagine if it happened. Imagine the kind of person he could. It's fast. It's an interesting thing, because the way you see him deal with problems and issues and handling people throughout his position at Psy Corps, death of personality would probably kill Mr. Bester. I mean,
Well,
simply because
Well, a Psy Corps Psychop has to do it, right? So it would also be a mind battle because they do it mostly to mundanes.
yes,
yeah. And the one other thing, though, what I found interesting is like, yes, the one part of Harris was a P10 and the other part was the P12.
12. Yeah.
It's like, that many telepaths in one brain.
See, that's very interesting because it is one brain, and that parts of it have the potential P12 and the other parts have P10,
Right.
but tied
But
to
they're like
the
brothers.
personality.
Yep.
I
It's
wonder.
like,
I always
oh,
thought.
man.
Sorry, I always thought the death of personality was a machine because when we saw that happening in, I believe, end of season 2, it was Tally Winters was scanning the guy to make sure that the procedure worked.
Yes.
So I think it's a machine, and I think that was actually one of the most dangerous things, that someone like Clark, any political regime could wipe somebody and reprogram them.
But
What's
it would have
interesting-
to, but it would technically have to be a telepath to make it possible against another telepath. Like
Possibly,
like
yeah.
Fiona says, probably multiple telepaths because of how powerful Bester is.
There's another show that reminds me of Babylon 5, as many are. It's a Krypton one where General Zod, he takes control and he punishes or anyone, even if you're innocent, because he's a tyrant. He uses a machine to reset your mind, like they call it somatic reconditioning, but it's death of personality pretty much. And they use a machine, and apparently it's very, very painful. So I was thinking maybe it is a machine after all, like what you're saying, but a telepath might be stronger to resist. So they would probably have to use a lot of telepaths.
And I thought the opening to this episode was pretty interesting because they did switch it up a bit to reflect, like, yes, the Corps loves you, right? Right. Oh no.
I missed that. That was the first time, was today watching it, was the first time I noticed, hey, the introductions changed. There's the Corps symbol, trust the Corps.
Yes, I just want your love and acceptance. Yeah, right.
Hashtag the Corps done nothing wrong.
Well, here's the interesting thing: when you see the interior hallways of the Psy Corps, it is almost. I think maybe it's an Easter egg or it's a callback to a favorite sci-fi movie of mine, or of a lot of people's, and that's of course They Live. One of the signs that says "Obey," and you're like, "Oh, Straczynski, are you paying a little homage to Mr. John Carpenter, one of our all-time favorite directors?"
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. But, the thing I found really interesting was when Bester was sitting in that room with the two trainees, Lauren and I think the guy's name was Cho. Something like that. And he shows him that little short video of the guy who looked all dirty and nasty and frumpy and everything. And then he's like, but the Corps helped me get all clean and better. So, and you're wondering just how much of a crock is that video? Because it seems it seems like a lot of propaganda
Was it in season 4 where Sheridan was being held? I was just reminded of that the interrogator told him, "Oh yeah, we will kill you, but first we'll wheel you out. After you've been broken, we'll wheel you out so everyone can see that your conversion is genuine. And then one day, when you're not expecting it, we'll come and kill you. But until then, you'll be free." And that's what I was thinking when I was looking at that guy, saying he's standing out there telling everyone he's a properly converted. Oh, I was wrong. But I'm wondering, is it the same mindset that one day he'll have a shaving accident and, have found duct-tied in his bathroom, accidentally cutting himself shaving.
Or they do what Bester did and put a little rule in their head and then they kill themselves later. You know, like Garibaldi can't kill Bester, and then one day out of nowhere they'll just like jump off of something because it's implanted in them.
Or one day he goes to have a fantastic corned beef sandwich with some amazing mustard on it. He takes a bite and then dies as a result of being poisoned from the sandwich.
Oh, the mustard seeds of death.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
And that was supposed to be the best part. No.
And I do want to say hello to the chat, the Nerdiporial life form. Nerdiporial, it's good to see you. I know you're a regular over on Tim's Talks Neck of the Woods. I know you've got your own channel, so appreciate you being here. And I will bring up your comment because it is very very astute. Psy Corps wore black leather gloves like the Gestapo. Yes, they did. They are clearly evil. I love how Bester didn't approve of the Clark administration's treatment of telepaths, giving him a sliver of humanity. And I think this episode, as I mentioned before, does do a little bit to humanize Bester as well, but at the same time, you see how Bester interacts with everybody, and you get it. It doesn't feel,
it's the scary level of indoctrination. That's what it really is.
It's
like he does everything through the Psy Corps lens. Everything.
So, yeah, and Chaos Nova, the episode that Elysium is referring to is in season 3 of Babylon 5. It's called Walking Through Gethsemane. Very powerful, very excellent episode. Brad Dourif has guest stars as a monk who discovers that he was actually and he had what they call the death of personality performed on him, but before that he was actually a serial killer. I would highly recommend, if you want a good idea of what happens to a person who goes through death of personality, check out that episode. Of course, check out every single episode of Babylon 5 because they're all worth your time. So, but the interesting thing about, as I've mentioned, the thing about this episode and all the other, in particular, like the episode from season 4 where they go to Zaha Doom after the Shadows have left, and Bester is so desperate to find a cure for his lover, and you see that scene in the aftermath of them getting back from Zaha Doom after it self-destructs, and he's staying outside, staying in front of the cryo chamber that is holding his lover in suspended animation, essentially. And aside from
not to cut you off, Ambassador, but I wanted to say this before I forgot. Did you get Mr. Freeze vibes from that?
Maybe a little bit. Yeah. Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I have said before, Mr. Freeze is by far one of my favorite villains from the DC universe, and by far one of my favorite from the Rogues Gallery of Batman. But with Bester in this episode and that previous episode that I just mentioned, Bester is very single-minded. And a single-minded individual can come off as very cold, very harsh, very antagonistic, very antisocial. But what this episode does is it doesn't go over the line too much, but it very much humanizes who Alfred Bester is. And I will say this. This episode is one of the few times that we actually see Bester frightened. Because when he does that little trick where he's staying in front of the mirror and he puts his hand on the mirror and then he sees Harris in the reflection and he's talking to himself, or he's talking to Harris in his mind. And after the exchange that he has with Harris or has with himself, the expression on Bester's face, I will say it comes off almost as legitimate dread. And this is something that we have never seen in Bester before. We've seen him angry. We've seen him maliciously jovial. We have seen him legitimately jovial. We have seen him extremely ruthless. But we have never seen him frightened. And I think that, above anything else, goes to truly humanize Alfred Bester. We may not necessarily like him, his methods, or what he does, or who he is, to one degree or another. But in this episode, he feels legitimate fear. And you have to wonder, is this the first time that he has felt fear like this in his life? I mean, go ahead, Coach Jay.
No, I think he's so, because I really think all characters and people have good in them, and they all have humanizing moments. It's just how bad they are determines how few moments those are, or what they uphold in their actions. Make them real evil people, really. But they'll always have like humanized moments, and I think since this is following the world of Bester, we get to see when he is afraid and what does get him, because we always see him from the viewpoint of our heroes in this story, and which shows that I think he really keeps all his vulnerabilities close to the chest and only to his world. And now that we're in it, we have a rare moment to see when he is afraid, however often that is, or however rare. So I think he does have him. I just believe it's very rare.
The good old Psy Corps trilogy does show a few more moments where he truly did get terrified. Like even when he did that one deathbed scan, it shows what happened to him during that deathbed scan.
Ooh.
I wonder, does some of we see the Psy Corps training, how it basically dehumanizes the Psychops, because as Bester said, you have to hold out against mind shredders for about an hour, because no one but a Psychop can manage anything more than about half an hour, 45 minutes. And you see how horrific that looks when the trainees are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And actually something just popped into my mind. But Bester lost his parents early, and they do mention in other episodes he's always volunteering for deathbed scans. I'm wondering, is he trying to touch something to try and find his parents? That he's trying to see, is there something beyond, will I see my parents again? And that he's that lost child that basically had the humanity stripped out of him young.
Or what if that's like, what if that's like how he got attracted to it? And I wonder, because they say you lose something. I wonder if that innocence of that boy looking for his parents was lost during one of those deathbed scans.
And he does live in a pretty evil, like you see the nurturing side of Psy Corps in a way, like Byron's people. He had a nurturing element, but he was a pretty bad person, despite his ideal for peace. Bester flat out knows that there's going to be a war, doesn't care. And that he's given up on humanity, so he doesn't care. He sees mundanes as easily disposable.
Yeah, because I think even at the time, what they said, like 1 in every 10,000 people is a telepath, and then of that, only a certain amount are above like a P5.
Something like that. I think is it 1 in 1,000 have some latent telepathic abilities, and 1 in 10,000 was telekinetic. But I think it's like a logarithmic. Like the vast majority will be P1 or P2. Then I think P5s are the commercial telepaths who do the corporate negotiations. And I think, like Talia said, there's so few of us that they're a place like Babylon 5, if there was manic, they would
here's something else though too. they go over a little bit of Lita and Talia in the Psy Corps trilogy when they're doing that internship stuff for the Psy Cops. You know, like, or rather, Lita is telling Talia like how horrible it was, and they actually show a little bit of what Lita went through with that part of the training. And it's like, oof, oopsie.
It definitely wasn't pleasant, that's for sure.
Well, and I honestly think, I think having those two young trainees, those two young Psy Cop trainees in this episode was a good move on the part of Straczynski as in terms as a storytelling element, but also it shows just how truly innocent and idealistic a Psy Cop trainee is. But if you notice at the end of this episode, the young woman, Lauren, she's like, we still have the mundane to take care of, and she well, I don't want to say she begs, but she kind of coerces Bester. She's like, can I do it, please? And he kind of relents, and he's like, maybe
Well, this
you
one
are
looks promising. Yes.
Yeah, essentially he says maybe you are a Psy Cop material after all. So obviously the taking of a life is part of the process of becoming a Psy Cop. And you think about it, taking a life is a very dehumanizing thing. It kind of strips away your humanity. And I know that this is something we haven't discussed in any great detail or length or anything. And I know MB Geek can probably touch and speak to this to a certain degree or not. But if you think about it, in certain branches of the military, they do kind of work with you to dehumanize the enemy. That way it is easier to take that life. Because if you see that life as less than yours, or if they use the idea of self-preservation above all else, that's another way to facilitate the training of soldiers. And essentially, if you think about it, the Psy Corps and every Psy Cop that they train is essentially a soldier for the coming war between mundanes. Okay, I don't like that word, but it's the word they use. Normal human beings and telepaths.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that Bester says to Lauren and everything when he kind of goads Mr. Allen, he's like, and he'll be preoccupied with that thought all day. And he's like, that's why eventually when the war between us and mundanes comes, we will win. And I'm thinking, well, you're just a little bit overconfident because there's a lot more mundanes out there than there is of you. And you can only sow so many rumors, so much deceit, only so far before we're going to get wise to it, and we're simply not going to listen. And obviously we know that in the end, the Psy Corps does get destroyed. It does get toppled down. And something better is put in its place. So
I don't know. That's idealistic in a lot of ways, because here's the thing. Humanity, at least the mundane faction of humanity, is awfully fickle and stupid. It doesn't take much to brainwash a regular human being and make them believe something that isn't true. Okay, so for me, I feel like if human beings were literally at war with a race of telepaths, I think in reality it would be over awfully quickly, because all the telepaths would have to do would be to plant a certain rumor that's believable enough for the majority of the gullible part of the population to believe it and go crazy, and that's the end of it. I mean, I really feel like Babylon 5, gives a really optimistic view of humanity in general being able to, again, topple the telepaths, because in real life, in this particular planet that we live on, people are entirely too gullible and stupid to be able to overcome a war with a race of telepaths. I mean, just the reality, I think, personally.
Oh, but honestly, I've been rereading bits and pieces of the Psy Corps trilogy, and it's just like, man, those morons are like, we need weapons and we need them now, and it's just like
they need weapons, all right.
unsuspecting human population. Do. Oops.
It's kind of like they've dehumanized the non-telepath human side so much that they probably look at it as like a zombie apocalypse, just not as unhygienic as zombies or something. Because we're like you were saying, they totally dehumanized us. And Bester, with where he grew up, and piggybacking off of what Lysium said, with the whole how this seems like their propaganda ploy with what we saw, how they interrogated Sheridan. Like, this is that system. Their whole system is propaganda, and they have this aggressive lifestyle and fancy bougie type of way of life if you're on their side, and everything's all great. But they treat everyone else with extreme prejudice and inhumane ways, and that any moment of opportunity they get within the law that they're doing their job, they will kill you.
Mundanes are not human. Mundanes
exactly
are less than human. Mundanes
like
are
unevolved
vermin. That's how they see it.
So, and I do want to thank Geek for sharing this comment with us or anything, because MB Geek is a retired Marine, and he knows this from him and his wife both. In boot camp in the Marine Corps, we were trained to kill the enemy. It was hammered into us. It did not mean they were evil, but they were enemies of our nation. And that's granted, that's just a snapshot of what Geek had to go through and everything in his time in the Marine Corps. But I think what the Psy Corps does, I think, is a lot more insidious, and honestly, I think is a lot more damaging. Because if you look at Bester, he is essentially the poster child for the whole blasted bunch of them, and to him, mundanes truly are lesser than him and his kind. As you all said, they are lesser. They are vermin. They are not even to be regarded as human per se. And to go through that type of indoctrination, to go through that type of brainwashing is horrific to even hear about for us that have never had to experience anything like that. To be told every single day of your life, this is the enemy, you don't trust them, you don't give them an inch, you don't give in, nothing, no how, no way. And for a young child, even, it's absolutely positively horrific. And then the phrase or anything I actually want to bring up, I want to read this because Elysium was kind enough to share it in our private chat here. This is from the Babylon wiki. I pledge my body, heart, and mind to the service of the Earth Alliance and the people who dwell in her myriad spheres. I promise to keep the laws, to keep the faith, to keep my eyes on the truth. I pledge to serve my comrades, my cadre, and the Corps. The Corps teaches, guides, and provides. The Corps is mother, the Corps is father. We are children of the Corps. And then there is one other piece here that Elysium was good enough to share. Oops, we lost Coach A again. All right. The Corps is mother, the Corps is father. The Corps is your friend. Trust the Corps. Okay, Jose is back. We are everywhere for your convenience. Protect the family, obey, trust the Corps, maternus paternus, united in thought, revered in memory. Now that sounds all nice and peachy and nice and good, but at the same time, it's absolutely positively insidious because if you consider the organization that created this pledge, it is shocking, it is somewhat terrifying, and it's something I most definitely would not want to be a part of.
Oh, here's something else fun. There was a shard of a Vorlon inside of Bester's paternal line, all the way up to his grandpa. Oh boy! Just kind of like how Sheridan got to carry a piece of Kosh around. But, ooh boy! And this is back in like our equivalent of, I think, what was it, like the 17 or 1800s? Yeah. So the Vorlons have been working out on us for a while. At least as far as integrating telepaths into our society.
Mm.
Well, I do want to bring up Colin. I've got Colin's comment here. Just a thought: is the Psy Corps JMS is dealing with a form of racism, subtle as well, of course.
I agree.
I would think I would definitely say that is that is one interpretation. I would definitely say that the Psy Corps is a allegory for not just racism, but
Nazism.
That too.
Mm.
Yes, to a degree. Yes, I would agree with that. As Nerdoporeal Lifeform pointed out earlier, the Psy Corps wears black gloves just like the Gestapo did. The other thing I would say about the Psy Corps is that it is very much it borders on a cult, because the organization itself is almost deified. When it is anything but holy or to be revered. But the structure of Psy Corps itself is, like I said, in a lot of ways it borders on cultishness. And well, I'll come out and say this. It is, I think, to one degree or another, it is almost like a fictitious version of a real world, and I will call it for what it is, a real world cult, and that is, of course, Scientology.
Oh, I agree.
Well,
because
that in Psy Corps, though, was kind of militaristic from the being almost from the beginning.
Granted,
because
yes.
Bester's grandfather, when he found the Vorlon on Venus, and it explained this whole thing to him, he's like, "Shoot, I got to make sure the telepaths are even more specialized because we're humanity's only hope. We're the head of the spear." So that caused more barrel of fun.
Definitely, that's total cultish. Because backtrack on what Archer said, I think they did tackle the racism part, a metaphor early on with Pro Earth. You know, when they branded that Minbari singer and they attacked those two Centauri, Veer's cousin and her boyfriend or whatever. That was definitely more like the KKK of Babylon 5 universe. And the Psy Corps, I would say they're definitely organized cult, like especially the Scientology part. Because when I was working in the small areas in Hollywood, I would just get like random calls from like Scientologist groups saying, "Hey, would you like to join?"
Might have been a good move for your career there, Koj. To be honest,
nah. Because what's crazy about them, what makes them seem very cultish like Psy Corps is like they have their own kind of Amish like community. And there's this actress who has like this I forget the name of the show, but it's this documentary series that's interviewing people.
Leah Remini.
Yes, her one that's a fantastic show. because
Mhm.
it's very it puts them out there and all their bullshit, because they kind of have this
Mhm.
Amish like society where
Mhm.
the group, there's like no mother, father, sister, brother system in there. It's like the community of the Scientologists will raise you, like, and to me that's evil as hell, because that's a dehumanizing thing, to cut off your family, your parents, your loved ones, your cousins, your
A lot of
siblings.
a lot of
That's
organized
awful.
religions, do that though too. Like if you're not part of a certain religious group, then they ostracize people, regardless of if they're your family, friends, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a common trait that you see, not just in Scientology, but I see where you're going there.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
there's different types of cultish systems, I think, and they're all bad.
Yeah.
I
Psy
would
Corps is no
say
different.
that maybe some more of the more extreme fringe groups within organized religion, most certainly, but I think some more of the more mainline. I wouldn't necessarily categorize them as that, but I do get the analogy that you're giving, Sod Rider. So,
Oh yeah, I
uh,
was talking specifically. You when you mentioned particular groups, like there's certain, like for example, that's what Jehovah Witnesses do. That's what
mm,
Mormons do. There's
mm,
there's certain
yeah,
groups that I'm just
I
saying more extreme, more on the extreme side.
side, yeah,
I
I agree.
think extremes on all, because I've seen the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like we'll say within, honestly, my own religion, Catholicism, some really extreme traditionals, they're like that. Some really extreme on the liberal side are like that. But I also see it in politics. If some
Yes.
members of your family are indoctrinated in, I say like in one party or the other, or like in my country in three or four, if you're not within the in group, you're evil, you're an ist, you're whatever, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're a bad
Hmm.
person if you're not exactly lockstep with the current great thing.
That's very
And
cultish logic. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. I do want to I do have Colin's comment up here, and I know you mentioned this series before, Colin, and everything in the chat. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to highlight it then, but I did want to address this briefly. I would be genuinely interested to find out if Straczynski, darn it, jumped on me. Hang on. If JMS was aware of the original UK Tomorrow People, which also dealt with emerging telepaths, in that case, few and underground, literally. That that's not a series I'm particularly familiar with, Colin. But from what you've mentioned in the chat, that's a very good question, and I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if JMS did draw some inspiration from that particular series. I mean, let's be honest here. JMS knows how to create his own stuff, but he also knows how to um not I don't want to say borrow, but be inspired by other genres or other franchises within the sci-fi or science fiction realm. So, um it would not be the least bit surprising. I think Drake actually, Drake Tungsten and everything was confirming your suspicion here. So, Drake, thank you. Um, you know, let's see. The one thing we've not really touched on is the rogue telepath, as he is regarded after he runs from the Corps, after he does what he does to his training partner. They very much don't want any harm to come to him. They want him brought back in, and I have to wonder what's going to happen to him. What potentially happened to him once they got him back to Psy Corps headquarters? And I just wonder, did they somehow suppress the P10 personality and elevate the P12 personality? Did they figure out some way telepathically to cordon off the weaker personality and work more so with the more aggressive and the P12 personality? And honestly, how do you all feel about them potentially doing that? I mean, I might have an
I
answer.
don't like
but
it all together, but I see them doing it for sure by their standards.
I
But the
wonder
qu-
would they do the same as did to Talia Winters? Like they might insert another personality and kill the others.
Mm-hmm.
Just a possibility.
Yeah, but the question is, even as powerful as Bester is, and heaven only knows if there are other Cyclops as strong as him, can they potentially break? Can they somehow make that more aggressive personality subservient to what they want it to be? Because they were treating it as the higher up said to Bester to be a mind ripper, essentially destroy you from the inside out.
One little side note, based on what I saw the Nautilus coil there, because I'm looking that up now too, because I had that file. Lita lied about being able to remove Bester's block so she could have something over Garibaldi to help her out later.
Oh yeah, she totally right.
Doop-de-doo. Oh man. Ah. Man, telepaths. The Vorlons just had to give us telepaths, didn't they?
Well, from Lita, I always kind of hinted at that before we read about it because she doesn't trust how she's been treated by I think the whole staff of Babylon 5. Like they don't have her best interests at heart, so I think
would
she'd
say-
definitely play a little dirty.
I would say that out of all of them, she trusts Delenn the most, though. 'Cause
Yes.
Delenn never really held anything over her. Delenn would just always ask or like do something in exchange, really. That's why Lita called Delenn during that one escapade where she was trying to escape, from being shot.
Mm-hmm. Because she knows
Yeah.
Delenn will back her because, Delenn is very, very sympathetic and has a
Yes.
huge amount of empathy. Delenn's like the staple,
Yes,
She's the great way to be.
I do want to address MB's question here. Do any of you think the Psy Corps was buying their time to become the kingmakers and the real power behind EarthGov, or am I just reading too much into
No.
it?
No,
they were definitely-
100,000%.
No, good.
Okay, yeah, and Bester's grandpa started part of that because, especially once he saw what the Vorlons were trying to do to people, and near the end of the Psy Corps trilogy, before the Nautilus coil thing, he actually goes to that planet you see that Lita has flashes of. Lita was actually on the planet where they made Vorlon telepath stuff. And it's actually within their empire, and Bester's grandpa gave a time-delayed data cove to give the rest of the Psy Corps, like, here's this planet, this is where I went to, and they eventually find him later, and he's able to use the augmented telepathic capabilities of that entire planet to trick Lita, of all people, that everything's gone and dead, and that the Vorlons succeeded, so we don't need this facility anymore. But Bester's scary grandpa, along with that whole planet, is still out there.
There was something cool right now about the way you just said Lita.
Yeah. It was to throw a mind warp on the specially enhanced Vorlon weapon of destruction called Lita Alexander.
I got a question for the whole console. What would each of you do if you were a telepath? Would you be a member of the Corps, or would you be a rogue telepath? What would be your take on it? Honest answers. And I'll answer first. I would join the Corps.
I think younger, foolish me would join the Corps. Older me would not. Depends when.
I guess it depends on whether or not you have parents that are already in the Corps and indoctrinated versus if
that
you have
too.
rogue telepath parents instead.
I'll tell you why I would join the Corps, because in order to change the way things are done in the Corps from the inside, you have to be a part of the Corps.
Yeah.
How can you elicit change if you're just somebody rogue from the outside trying
And they don't let you do anything.
Right.
But then again, you have to carry out their will. Me, I can't do that.
That's true. But
You'd have to
also,
be like a sort of double agent in some
Right,
cases,
right.
and that's just as dangerous.
That's just as dangerous, but you can do some good. If
It's probably
if there
true.
were enough of them.
I think it takes a certain person to be strong enough to do what you're doing. Zod, should you join the Corps for those goals? Me, I cannot. So
Well,
I know that
and I
because
think a
I
fair
was either
amount
going to
of
be
people.
medical field or LAPD, and for the same reasons I went medical field, because there's certain things I just can't do, even if it's for, a good cause.
Even in the
There's other ways
telepath
I could do
civil
it.
war, the telepath war, that happened to a fair amount of, like, there was a division that was loyal to Bester himself, and then there was everybody else, and it was a real cluster duck. Quack quack. It's like,
Elisa, you're the
Cats.
only one who hasn't answered yet. So, what's
I
your
think
answer?
I jokingly kind of put in, I get hate to be a telepath. I have enough voices in my own head already. But as knowing myself now, looking back, I would think I said the core evil. I work in, I've worked in large organizations, and no matter how optimistic you are going in, it'll break you down. You're not going to be able to make a change. So knowing that with experience, I'd probably try and be idealistic. I'd try and go rogue. But being young, found early, obviously I joined the Corps because I think, oh wow, I've mentioned it before that I was in a bad place when I was young. And I looked at the story like of younger, and I saw Byron. Well, there's someone who accepts you for who you are, doesn't care anything else because of who you are. Just come, there's a home
yeah.
for you.
In my case, I imagine if I was a telepath, I would have been in the Corps because, in general, there wasn't too many telepathic parents that were rebelling against the Corps as much. Even in the earlier days, it was mostly splinter groups that were trying to like run away. Even before the Psy Corps became a thing, what was it? The meta something regulation committee or something like that. Yeah, there wasn't too many people able to run from it. So
Yeah, I just think I know myself going from my own family history. Like my grandfather went into rebellion when Ireland were under English rule, and it was something like that. Go along, stay with the ruling people, and you'll be okay, kind of. And that's kind of what it's like with the Corps. But my grandfather took up arms, so I'd like to think I'd have his um, ability to go. Okay, I have to sacrifice now. I have to follow my conviction that I won't do those bad things. I won't be that evil organization. But I know myself, it's easier to just go along. And that's why the Corps, I think, is so powerful. Those running it, going back to NB's, I think, point, they're trying to change things from within, become indispensable, and they've been building up more and more power. And with something like that, knowing that, oh, if I become part of this organization, I won't be persecuted because I'm part of the ruling elite. And because you're special, as the Corps tell you, I'll be running things. It's very tempting for somebody, and it would take a 1 in a million to be able to rebel against that.
Well, and plus to elicit change, it takes more than just one. Maybe one telepath couldn't elicit change, but if enough people within the Corps wanted things to change and wanted to rebel against that way of thinking, it could be done. So that's.
I think though it needs a rebellion against the Corps, and a strong one for people within the Corps to think, okay, there is other options. These people are rebelling. If everyone was going along, the mind wouldn't be open. It's easier to go along when everyone's going along.
I also wonder how much change you can get into such an organization that probably has like their own little favorites or whatever. Because I used to work at a retail store for a long time, and I was like, yo, I think since I work here a long while, maybe I should go to manager level and make more money, since I could do, at that point I could do a lot of things that they can do actually. So I put in my request to move up in the company, and one of my good friends, he's a manager, and I was talking to him how it went. He said, yeah, there was a meeting, we talked about you, there's a lot of good things said, so I think they're going to figure it out. Then didn't hear anything for a while, and then my friend said, ask so and so, because she got the message. of a manager. Then I had a meeting with her, and she's like, "Oh, you want to move up? This is the first time I'm hearing of it." And then I had like a dog head tilt, like, "Rrr?" And then I said, "Oh, okay, no worries." And then I just knew that there was a decision made, and then she even lied about it to my face within the company, and there was like this block. I was like, okay, I guess I'm never going to be a manager here at all. So there could be bigger organizations. There might be even smaller, like little groups that are, it's probably harder. It could be hard to move up there too. And that happens more often in Hollywood. So just because you're in, you might be stuck in a position that they keep you in, because sometimes these organizations, they already judge you or who you are, and they want to keep you in a place and not see you succeed at all, even under their standards, to make them look good, because maybe they are the ones who want to look good all the time or something like that. So I don't like any pyramid system, so it's like I don't know if it would work in my own experience.
The only other thing I can think of, like Susan's situation, say like even if your parents didn't join the Corps, they'd probably be stoned out on those sleeper, kind of pills, and then you yourself would be growing up fearing, do I have that capability? Are they going to come after me? So I don't think there really is any good choice if you're a telepath, at least during that time period for Babylon 5.
Well, to answer your question, Zodrider, from my perspective, if I found out I was a telepath, I hightail it wherever I'm at to the Endless Shock. I become a ranger, and then I go to one of my instructors and say, "Hey, guess what else I can do?" And then I beam a thought into their head, and they're like, "Oh, you're a telepath." I'm like, "Yeah." So
dude, a telepathic ranger, that'd be sick.
Yep, that is personally what I would do.
That's literally the first real Babylon 5 Jedi, really, if you had telekinesis as well.
And
yes,
they were able, like was mentioned in this, like the guy in the run was able to matrix skill out of people's minds. He ripped the idea of how to go gambling from somebody. So it's something you could also use as a ranger. If it's not too invasive, you can pick out skills or pick out something from people to enhance your own abilities. Just think, but then again, it doesn't seem to track with other elements within the universe of Babylon 5, but he was able to pick up gambling.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I think reading the experience is more like in Highlander, you know how they just get all that mind and experience.
Well, yeah, because you chop the head off of another person.
Yeah, but their psyche goes into you. That's the creepiest part.
True, unless you're Clancy Brown and you're the Kurgan, then it's all sorts of creepy, monstrous looking things that are biting down on you and whatnot. So, but, great film, by the way. I'm actually
burn out and fade away.
TV series was fantastic too.
It was. I'm actually somewhat. I'm somewhat hopeful for the fact that they're going to be doing. They're either rebooting the series or it's a continuation. That
they're rebooting it with Henry Cavill as the.
That's what I've heard.
That's right.
That's what I've heard.
Well, the movie sequels, they all felt like reboots. They didn't really sync up to each other,
except for maybe the second
one.
They
backed themselves into a corner with the second one. Well, with the first one, actually, the first one, because there was never meant to be any sequels.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. No, there really wasn't.
Beautiful, man. You can watch the first one in the series, and then I think you're good.
Yes.
Although the second one is just a guilty pleasure, awesome for some odd reason.
The Renegade version.
Cool. The Renegade version, yes.
Well, of course, because it's Sean freaking Connery and Michael freaking Ironside. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I love that little. This is one of the few quotes from the Highlander 2 that I remember. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you don't take it out and use it, eventually it'll rust.
Yeah.
General Katana. I love Michael Ironside.
You know what movie is a guilty pleasure of mine? Highlander Endgame. That movie.
Highlander Endgame's okay.
Wait, that's the series finale, right?
It's technically it kind of was, and then they stupidly made another movie after
The
that
Source.
called The Source, which went nowhere.
That thing made my brain
I
hurt.
missed out on that one.
That movie made my brain hurt.
Yeah,
okay. It's not Last Jedi bad, but it's still pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. And then when when the overseer starts singing "Who Wants to Be Forever," it's almost like you might as well just turn it off at that point, because there's no. But what I'm saying about that in relation to Highlander Endgame kind of gives me in some ways, sort of gives me a bit of a Babylon 5 kind of feel. Because when I watch Endgame, because I consider Endgame to be the last Highlander, the last piece in the Highlander mythology. I don't consider anything that came after anything. But that particular movie, I feel like it elevated the characters in a way. Like, for example, like with Babylon 5, you get to see Sheridan and Sinclair together in World Without End. And here in Endgame, you actually get a legitimate adventure. And not that it wasn't done, because it was done initially in the beginning of the series, but you do get a legitimate adventure between Connor and Duncan MacLeod, which is not something that and it's really legitimate, and it's really emotional, at least for me, when you get to see the two of them, when you realize how high the stakes are, and the two of them actually have to face each other, which to me
and why they had to, and then their last exchange before that final blow was just
my God,
that crushed me.
So deep.
I teared up. I ain't gonna lie.
It does. It makes me cry every time I see it. I'm not even gonna lie. It's epic. And to me, this is what I'm talking about. That was, for me, it was like a Babylon 5 moment. To see them together in a way where the stakes are, where it actually means something. It's completely legit. And I don't know. I just think it's a very, very underrated film, to be honest.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, well, guys and gal, I think we're going to call it an afternoon or an evening. A really great discussion. I know we went off a little bit of a tangent there at the very end, but I think we are going to call it. We're going to call it a stream and go ahead and do our wrap ups. But great discussion, great time. Good job, everybody, as always. So, and I do want to thank everybody that hung out in the chat with us this afternoon, both the regulars and some new faces. Good to see you all, and appreciate you all popping in this afternoon. We will, of course, be back next week with another installment, which, of course, will be covering the episode, as I mentioned earlier, the episode Ragged Edge. So, and then we'll be back on track and everything when we'll get back on chronological order or release order for the rest of season 5. So, I do want to let you all know that I will be going live tomorrow evening. Haven't set a time as of yet, but being this is, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, it is Holy Week. I'm not going to do anything on Sunday, Easter Sunday. I'm going to spend time with the family, obviously, but going to bring you all bring you something a little bit different. I'm going to do a ultra retro review for one of my all-time favorite films from the Silver Age of the Silver Screen. What I consider to be a true epic, and I think very appropriate for this time of year. And that's, of course, Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments. So I'll be setting that stream up later this evening, and I'll send out the information on my social media accounts. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. Like I said, we'll be back next week, and I've got a few other things in the works or anything coming up in terms of content for the channel. As always, the Mountains of Elysium is good enough to include the links to everybody's channel in the chat. So if you have not checked out Yes. If you have not checked out Zod Rider or Fianna or Lord Koj or Mountains of Elysium or Classic Comics, be sure to do so because they all do great work on their channels and they are all well worth your time. So, but anyways, folks, you all have a great night. Have a very blessed and a very happy Easter. We will see you all next week. And until next time, this is a Council of One saying 3, 2, 1. Zooty!
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 Zoot!
Never trust a Mordon! Never trust a Mordon! No!